2014 was the International Year of Small Island Developing States. And if you're wondering, well, why does the classification Small Island Developing State even exist? You're in the right place. Well, first let's start with the definition. Depending on where you look, the definition of small island developing states varies slightly based on the mandate of the organization defining them, but here are the main points. It comes directly from the recognition of these islands as uniquely vulnerable. SIDS are, as you would guess, small, but they're also vulnerable in ways that larger nations aren't. They face social, developmental, and environmental challenges stemming from, yes, their size, but also their geographical positioning and low-lying nature. Worldwide, there are 58 SIDS. They can be found in the Caribbean, the Pacific, and the Ames regions. Despite a singular classification, these states aren't a monolith. However, they do share similar challenges. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to 1992. That's when the declaration was made by the UN. Chapter 17 within Agenda 21 committed assembly members to adopt and implement plans and programs to support sustainable development in SIDS. Then in 1994, the Global Conference of Small Island Developing States, held in Barbados, saw the adoption of the Barbados Program of Action, along with 14 priority areas for SIDS. These included climate change, land resources, fresh water, and transportation. The BPOA expanded on Agenda 21 by highlighting challenges that result in SIDS' lack of socioeconomic development. After that was a series of reviews, reiterations, reprimanding, and reconvening, plus 5 more priority areas to draw the same conclusion. SIDS are really vulnerable. Here's the thing, SIDS haven't quite made the advances many were hoping for back in 1994. Whether it's been difficulty accessing funding, diversion of funds to emergencies, or overall capacity issues to implement and monitor these priority areas, progress has been slow. Additionally, the combination of brain drains, negative population growth, and impacts of climate change placing continuous financial burdens on SIDS hasn't helped their case. The outcomes of which can be highlighted by the aftermath of increasingly intense natural disasters, like hurricanes in the Caribbean region. So let's focus there for a bit. Caribbean SIDS make up half the list. And although you might get some objections from your dictionary about whether some of the countries are technically islands, we're gonna go with the UN on this one. Like most SIDS, tourism is a large contributor to the economy. But we're so much more than tourist paradise. These places are our homes. It's where families live, where we grew up. So despite our size, Caribbean SIDS contribute to the world in our own unique way. We've got delicious food, high levels of biodiversity, vibrant cultures, phenomenal music, and incredible athletes. But the region isn't without its own challenges. Despite declining growth rates, Caribbean nations are amongst the most densely populated in the world. Considering that the population density for all SIDS is around 60 persons per square kilometer, the Caribbean region has a density of around 193 persons per square kilometer. The only other region that comes close is Asia at around 150. And actually, only 6 Caribbean SIDS have a density below 60. All the others are upwards of that. There's also the financial side of things that poses an issue. Caribbean SIDS battle more and more difficult natural disasters each year. Countries end up devastated with decades of development often gone overnight. Despite contributing the least to the changing climate, these nations are hit the hardest. The burden is then placed on them to begin rebuilding efforts. These are costly and can take long periods of time for a country to recover. Some don't. Considering this, leaders of SIDS have pleaded with international institutions to recognize that the current methods of evaluation, such as per capita income, don't adequately take into consideration the vulnerability of SIDS. This pours over into the borrowing options of these countries, often classified as either middle or high-income countries by the current measurement tools. They become excluded from funding opportunities that would allow their countries to adequately plan, build resiliency, and prosper. And many leaders have put forth alternative measures, such as a vulnerability index and natural disaster clauses in sovereign debt contracts, which they believe would paint more accurate pictures of their countries. Give them a fair chance at advancement and improving the lives of their citizens. It's also why partnerships, innovative thinking, and long-term planning are critical to success, to their survival. In order to bolster their abilities to negotiate on the world stage, Caribbean SIDS have joined, formed, or partnered with other regions to operate collectively rather than individually. Examples of these include CARICOM, the Alliance of Small Island States, and the Association of Caribbean States. We're also seeing strengthening in other areas. Resilience building and climate impact mitigation are coming into focus, be it increasing calls for and implementation of renewable energy like solar, or the banning of single-use plastics in countries across the region. There's also an emphasis on disaster management and preparedness, such as with the Early Warning System Toolkit by SEDIMA, which focuses on reducing disaster risks in the Caribbean. These are all steps in the right direction, and there are other initiatives that are being undertaken to balance the scale for SIDS. This is merely the surface. At the end of the day, small island developing states remain some of the most vulnerable countries on the planet, and that probably won't change. However, a global effort to help build the resiliency needed for the current reality could alter the outcomes. That means honoring commitments made by nations in 1994 and subsequent meetings, and providing the resources to ensure that the program of action can be achieved. The truth is, paradise needs to be protected, and they can't do it alone.